On Monday, we showed you this word cloud. It was created by the polling firm JL Partners after they asked 2,000 respondents to describe the Labour leader. As you can see, the most common response was boring. And it looks like it was the most common response by quite a long way. Well, now we can say that boring label seems to have really bugged Starmer, and he's desperate for people to stop calling him it. The Guardian report: Keir Starmer has urged his shadow cabinet to stop briefing the press that he is boring, warning them, quote, "What's boring is being in opposition." Stung by a series of negative stories about his leadership, Starmer angrily urged colleagues at Tuesday's shadow cabinet meeting to focus on the job in hand, telling them it was boring to undermine Labour's project of getting back into government. Several of those around the table then echoed their leader's call for unity and discretion in a lengthy exchange described by one shadow bencher as, ironically, very boring. Now, Aaron, I know we complain a lot about The Guardian, but that was one of the most entertaining passages I've read in political journalism in quite a while. What did you make of it?
It was entertaining, but also they would never have said something like that during the leadership election or during the Corbyn leadership when Keir Starmer was clearly a stalking horse for the party right. They would never have said that. But now that there's no real threat of the left, now that there's actually no real possibility of profound progressive change in this country, yeah, okay, let's lighten up. Keir Starmer's so boring. And ultimately, who does that help in terms of progressive causes? Nobody. Because who do they want to be the leader instead? Yvette Cooper? What? She's so exciting and dynamic and bold and ambitious with so many ideas. Who? So this is exactly what they claimed the British public wanted. Because the reality is, British politics after 2015 was replete with big ideas. Some very good, like public ownership. I think some not so good, like having zero immigration was being touted, for instance, as kind of an ultra Brexiteer line of thinking, or Kanzuk. Let's be in an economic trading arrangement with Canada or Australia and New Zealand. Not such a great idea, but hey, it's a big idea. It's very different to what we've been doing for a very long time. So you had this flourishing of ideas for 5 years from both the left and the right, and the centre hated it. The establishment hated it. Now you're thinking, oh, Aaron, you're just going on all the cliches. You're an autopilot. You always say this. No, this is exactly what I mean. The people who control liberal thought in this country, Tony Blair has two 10 million pound houses. Peter Mandelson has a 10 million pound house. Every blue tick liberal pundit who's been in politics for 20, 25 years owns property probably in zones 1 to 4 of London, maybe more in London, maybe second homes outside London, maybe they're landlords. All these people have done perfectly well in the last 10 years, despite austerity, despite the various political volatility, because they own these assets. They've been going up in value. And actually, taxes remained, until the last 18 months, pretty stable and actually quite low. They're quite happy with that. So they were very happy to signal that they were progressive, they were socialist or social democrat or radical liberals or whatever. But actually, they didn't really want to rock the boat too much. And of course, we know that in social history, every 30, 40 years, well, whether you like it or not, the boat's rocked. Look at after the Second World War, look at the New Deal, look at Reaganism and Thatcherism. That's just how society works. New problems emerge, and eventually politicians respond to them. And the question is that done in a progressive or a regressive way? A egalitarian way, which centres working class people and labour rights, or one which centres profit and private property? That's the big task and the big ask of politics. But these people don't want to do that, so they just sort of they signal their progressive sort of commitments. But it's just like this article. It's just a bit of fun. And so now the left isn't really on the pitch anymore, Michael. Yeah, sure, they'll mock Keir Starmer. Why are they mocking him though? Well, the reality is because probably a more right-wing leader will come along.
I mean, could people not throw that back at you? I mean, is there much? I mean, you criticise Keir Starmer a lot. Are you not just paving the way for someone more right-wing to turn up?
It's a perfectly plausible argument. I mean, I don't think that's true. I would say Keir Starmer should go because Labour needs a more left-wing, more charismatic leader. And by the way, I'm open to the idea of compromise. So if you said tomorrow Barry Gardiner would be a better leader than Keir Starmer because he can bring the party together, he's a pluralist, he's far better on the media or whatever, I'd say, okay, that's reasonable. I could engage that argument. But you know what my political commitments are. I'm on the left. And I think fundamentally we need a transformative politics in response to the last 40 years. What gets me with The Guardian, with the liberal left, is they'll say, yeah, we need a transformative politics in response to the last 40 years. They'll have the columns from, various John Harris or whoever. And you do see them actually with greater frequency in the last sort of 3 to 6 months. But when push comes to shove, they're not really interested. And that's what irritates me, Michael. And even in a way, I have more respect for the sort of the blue Labourites or the Tories that say, this is the direction we want to take the country on, and their actions align with their beliefs. When it comes to the liberal press in this country, their actions do not align with their beliefs. That's what irritates.
Their actions do not align with their purported beliefs, I suppose. They say they're radical. They're always publishing these radical comment pieces, and then the moment a project comes around which might actually, bring it to pass, they find some imperfection in it. And I'm glad you mentioned John Harris. That's who sprung to my mind. Going back to this boring story, I know you're right, Aaron. This is not the most important thing going on right now, but Starmer does seem to be shaken, and he does seem to be determined to prove just how unboring and cool he actually is.
He says the economy is booming when it's shrinking. He's game playing so much. He thinks he's on Love Island. Trouble is, Prime Minister, I'm reliably informed that contestants that give the public the ick get booted out. Mr. Speaker, as for his boasting about the economy, he thinks he can perform Jedi mind tricks on the country. These aren't the droids you're looking for. No rules were broken. The economy is booming. The problem is, the force just isn't with him anymore. He thinks he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. The truth is he's Jabba the Hutt. That's the ostrich. He's not just denying how bad things are, he's actively making things worse.
You could just see sort of Rachel Reeves in the background trying to look like she's sort of laughing. And Keir Starmer in a forced way, laughing at his own jokes. Forget whether or not you want him to be Prime Minister. Is it worth his time trying to humanise himself? If people think he's boring, he could come up with some policies. I'd prefer him to do that. But could he also tell some jokes in Parliament?
No, because he's not funny. If you're not funny, don't tell jokes. And if you're boring, don't try to be interesting. And it's something that Owen Jones has said repeatedly. People say, well, in private, he's just so utterly different. Well, actually, every single person I've spoke to who knows him moderately well says he's exactly the same. So I don't really buy that, no. There are people out there who are misrepresented in public life who are actually quite charismatic, quite funny, quite, compelling individuals, and it just doesn't translate for whatever reason in politics. Al Gore was another good example, right? In the US, actually quite a decent, intellect, quite charismatic, but it just didn't work in 2000 for him. I don't think Keir Starmer is like that. Keir Starmer is, as I've said before, Michael, it's not just about his politics, which I've been very clear about. I don't agree with them. It's the fact, I think, that he came to politics really late. He was only a politician in 2015. Before that, he's been a lawyer and a career bureaucrat. The average councillor out there in Britain right now, who's been a councillor for 6-7 years, is more familiar and comfortable with what it takes to be a politician and that skill set. And that includes collaborating with others, not attacking and stitching up too many people because people like to have their revenge. That's something I think he's clearly not taken on board. But also the charisma thing. I'm sure there is something about him which, I'm sure some communications genius could squeeze out of him that would make him quite likable. I remember the Joe Biden advert where he was talking about his dad and classic cars. That was genius, right? Every boomer Republican's like, he likes classic cars. I mean, everybody likes classic cars, right? Of that age bracket. So they've tried it a little bit with the five-a-side football thing. I mean, yeah, they can try that a little bit, but the idea that you're going to lean into it and that he can somehow be a laugh-a-minute figure in the House of Parliament, cracking jokes that are making us all reel with laughter, that's not going to happen. And like you say, his best bet is being what he ran as, right? Substantive, detail-focused, ethically minded lawyer figure who actually wants to change things for the better. But that isn't who he is either, turns out. So they're in a bit of a sticky wicket. And like you say, the boring thing is a problem for them because you can go back a pretty long way. Boring people tend not to win general elections. They tend not to. The last time it happened was really 1992 with John Major beating Neil Kinnock. But you got the Welsh windbag versus a man who is synonymous with being grey and eating peas on spitting image. But generally speaking, the more affable, charismatic candidate in British politics becomes the Prime Minister, generally speaking. When I look at Keir Starmer, I'm reminded of Ian Duncan Smith, William Hague, These aren't particularly energizing, bold people who get the juices flowing. And like I say so often, Michael, he's got no oomph. People like a bit of oomph. Even people who detested Thatcher knew she had a project and she stood for what she believed in. People really admire that. Actually, until 2017, that's exactly what Corbyn had too, particularly in 2017. I saw so many focus groups or interviews, or I spoke to people working for Novara, and they said, I don't agree with him, but that guy's been saying the same thing for 35 years. Good luck to him. We need more people in life that stand by what they believe in. I don't really see that much in politics, you know. That is a brand. It's something that actually went over the heads of the blue tick pundits in London. What's Starmer's brand? It's definitely not telling jokes.
All of us here at Novara Media are working harder than ever to keep scrutinising establishment politicians and the media barons who protect them. We don't have billionaire funders. We don't have advertising partnerships. We're funded entirely by you. If you've ever thought about supporting us, now's the time to go to novaramedia.com/support and donate anything you can from just £1 per month. Defy the corporate media, join our monthly supporters and help build our supporter base to 10,000 strong.